on television, it was Naked Civil Servant with John Hurt, and Jack Gold was the director, and I had to tap dance badly, which wasn't difficult. And in the story, John Hurt was learning to tap dance himself in the mornings and teaching in the afternoon. So that was the first telly I did. I was going to say I went into the RSC, but I didn't. I worked with the Actors Company to begin with when I left drama school, and that was with Ian McKellen. And they promised, I don't know if you know Felicity Kendall here. She's in lots of series, and she was pregnant, and they promised me I'd take over from her, and she wouldn't give up. So I didn't get to play the part of the naughty maid in the Fado farce, but I played the hotel tart instead, and had a peignoir and a bustier and everything. So one of my the girlfriend, that we were acting ASM, so we played roles and had to do a lot of the tech stuff as well. And we did the Edinburgh Festival and toured the country and ended up in Cambridge. And one of my girlfriends still calls me Boobs because of this tart in the peignoir in the hotel, which can be very embarrassing. We went on holiday to Egypt recently, and you're seeing Luxor or Abu Simbel, and she's going, "Come along, Boobs!" And she's a very English sort of. She was the first person who I'd met that was really, really entitled and has all that kind of upper class public school kind of stuff, and head girl, and she's tall and robust. So we're a very comedy duo anyway when we go out. So yeah, those were my first, and then RSC and Romeo and Juliet, Audrey and As You Like It, and The Hostess in Shrew, and then some modern pieces and Chekhov and things. And came to the States on a tour with them, mid-70s. We played BAM, we played Brooklyn, and then we did a tour of America.
Fantastic. And a bit of 6 Degrees Of, you, along with Terry Molloy.
Who am I related to that I don't know about?
You're both in the Archers.
We are both in the Archers, that's right, yeah. Again, another villain. I don't know how it happens. I'm horrid Hazel, who was adopted. That's I was talking earlier about always trying to find a key for the wickedness, and I think I've known people who are adopted and are not well adjusted, so I kind of based it on her on that. And she's very successful, but she's very tough and doesn't give the local people much credit or gentleness. She's quite harsh. Terry and I have never worked together on it, but so I probably wouldn't. She wouldn't have anything to do with it.
Maybe there'll be a crossover one day. Your characters will meet.
Yeah, and I'm also in a soap at the moment, and the producer that I work with on The Archers is now my boss on EastEnders.
Nice. Excellent. And thank you for your producers to adjust your schedule slightly to allow you to be here.
Yes.
Many thanks to them.
Yeah, you have to ask early. You have to beg a lot. Be very nice.
Yes. Let's see, what else do we have here? Audio.
Yes.
Lately you've been getting
Big Finish, are you going to?
Big Finish Productions. Who here knows of Big Finish Productions? Yes. There will be a panel on that tomorrow. I get around. So,
yeah, they're trying to get me back for something in September, so we're hoping that's going to work out.
Fantastic.
With Tom and Louise.
Yes.
Louise and I were when I was talking about Romeo and Juliet and Audrey and As You Like It, Louise and I started together at the RSC, also with Jan Chappell. Janet Chappell. So we were the three.
Like 7.
Yeah. So we were the 3 little maids from school and got up to no good. In the early 70s, yeah.
One of the audios you recently did with Big Finish was with Tom.
Yep.
What was that like? Tom Baker.
Yeah. He's wonderful. He's such a fantastic raconteur, and he's great company and very generous. He's a generous man. He's kind.
Good.
Oh, good. You've heard different.
Well,
He was great with me.
some have their days. But yeah, it just comes across as, why have I waited so long to do
yes.
this? Let's see. Oh, movies, film. You have worked with, oh shoot.
Give me a
Something's in
clue.
my mind. Okay, Willy Wonka. Charlie and the
Right.
Chocolate Factory.
Johnny, I
Tim
didn't
Burton.
work.
Tim Burton.
Oh yes, I talked about that earlier and just how much, because he's quite shy and not forthcoming, and so am I. And I was talking about the process of the day where they make you try and feel at your best, so that when you get to the point of performing, you're going to do exactly what Tim Burton wants. So it was a glorious day, and then we met one another, and we you know, the conversation was very hard and hesitant. But once we started working, he was amazing, and just the lighting wasn't quite right for him, so he needed a box to stand on, and I was holding him on. You know, I had my hand on the back of his trousers to keep him on the box while he was adjusting the lighting. And he's saying, "She needs more coloured sweets in that bowl," it just was fantastic, because he just works. He's utterly dedicated to what he's doing, has a very clear vision of what he wants, and just rolls his sleeves up and really, you know, gets on with it. So, I mean, I was only on it for a day, but really loved being around him, and the party at the end, the rap party, was fantastic. So. They did London Bridge Station has old arches underneath it, and they occupied this entire space which went on for miles, and there was a casino and things, but there was also a fairground in there, so there were bumper cars and extraordinary, and that's where I did meet Johnny Depp very briefly. Yeah, a glorious event, really, for me.
Nice. And another television series that's become popular stateside, Outlander.
Yeah, well, it was made for the States. It was made for Stars. Ron D. Moore, who I liked very much. Ron is often producers are inaccessible and you know, have inevitably other priorities, but Ron is always a very calm centre, and I actually had to audition for him to get the part. I did a reading with the casting director in a very hot room with no aircon, and she didn't read very well, which is always difficult for an actor because you're not getting the feedback. And then they liked what I did, and I had to go and meet Ron, and Ron was just entirely different and sat by the camera and just chatted very easily, and he just always makes me feel terribly confident and at ease, and I think he does that for most people. And he's so high-powered, you would imagine something quite different from him, but he's just a very steady presence. And then it was great working with initially I was Sam Hewen and Tobias Menzies and myself were the first three to be cast. And then slowly, well, they couldn't find Claire, they couldn't, you know, cast Claire for a while, who, you know, is the main character. And Sam is very disarming. I don't know if people have seen it, but I found him utterly disarming because he's a great hunk of a guy, but he's beautifully mannered and generous and kind, and that's the thing that takes your breath away, because this great guy comes in the room, you kind of go, oh! And then he's terribly polite and well brought up, and that's the thing that made me melt, really. You kind of go, wow, great. I hope he hasn't changed.
Since the series has been renewed for 2 more seasons.
Yes.
More.
Well, my character should never have. She's only in the first section of the book, and they did try and bring me back. They wrote an episode for me last year, but I couldn't do it because of my commitment to EastEnders. And EastEnders had said they would release me, and then said they couldn't. So that hurt a lot because I did enjoy it. It's just very wholehearted, and the boys are daft and funny, and you have a good time. And I got on very well with the leading lady, so we had a good relationship.
that's the slight downside of getting a promotion on the series, as I call it. From recurring to lead, or one of the leads.
Yeah, well. I'd done a short film. There was a series on Sky in England where they'd asked comedians to write small comedic dramas for Christmas, and it was called Christmas Crackers. And Stephen Fry had written one year, and I was in that. And then an actress called Sheridan Smith. I don't know if she's known in the States.
Sheridan Smith?
Yeah.
From Big Finish Audios, yes, she played a companion to the Eighth Doctor, yes.
Well, she wrote one of these, and I had a big part in her piece. And the exec producer for that became the exec producer for EastEnders. And he'd said to me, if there's ever an Annette Badland shaped part, I'll get you into whatever I can. So he asked me to be in EastEnders. So that's how that grew. But he always knew, the intention was always to have me in as a regular, but I already had Outlander and I had Wizards vs. Aliens, so I had to go in and do just one episode, go away, do Outlander, then I went back and did 4 episodes, then I did Wizards, and then I started about 2 years ago in June as a kind of regular member of the cast.
Darn your popularity.
Yeah!
Having to make choices.
Very, very lucky.
Yeah.
Yes, choices.
Characters you played have run, both sides of the spectrum, the nice ones and the not so nice. Which do you feel you grab onto just a little bit more with relish?
You want me to say the wicked one, and I think you're probably right. I like, as I say, I love variety. I couldn't be just the, always the villains or always the goody two-shoes. But yes, villains are always, if they're well written, are fantastic to play. Yeah.
You did very well as Margaret.
Well, that was written for me. I mean, Russell was amazing. The first 2 episodes we did were the first 2 that were ever shot for the regeneration, because they often do that. They won't shoot the first episode of a new series first, because they all need to learn what they're up to. So they hide that in the middle of the scheduling, and they all shoot, as it was, 4 and 5. And they learn all the lessons they have to learn, and then they're kind of up and running by the time they're doing the first step. So there was never any intention for the to happen, but Russell liked what I was doing in the first 2. And then suddenly at Christmas I got this script, because I was working on something else, and there was this script fell onto my doormat, and it just ran the gamut. And I remember taking it up to bed and sitting reading it and just kind of going, my God, look now! Dinner in Bondage works for me, yes! One of the lines, just fantastic stuff. And that she was the first character, there was some strength there, because she was the first person who'd ever challenged the Doctor. So all sorts of things in there, and there was pathos, there was humour, just an absolute delight. And then of course it was difficult for them to, because I was doing something else, I was doing it by then doing Cutting It in the north of England, so it was really hard for them to schedule it to ever happen. So I could have lost it. It could have just been, we'll just store that and forget about it. But they persisted, and it happened. And I was also saying earlier, because Doctor Who is shot in Cardiff, and I was working in Manchester. Chris had to come out of the schedule for what he was actually shooting, because the restaurant scene was the first scene we shot. And it had to be done in real time, because it was all glass windows, you could see out, it had to be done at night. So Chris had to leave the eps he was working on and come and shoot that out of sequence. I had to be shipped from Manchester to come down, and they got me ready in the afternoon. We shot the scene through the night, and then they threw me in the back of a white van with a pillow and a blanket, and waved me. I can remember them all in this car park, just waving me goodbye. And I arrived back in Manchester at 5 in the morning and showered, and was picked up again for Cutting It by 6. So,
wow. Yeah, you were talking about the pathos of the character. That is probably the first time where we kind of had a point of view from the adversary's
Yes.
point of view, and for a few moments you actually felt for the character of Margaret or Blonde.
Yes. You can call me Blonde.
Hello, Blonde. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's amazing, isn't it? And I think part of the resurgence, that intelligence, is a great thing. You know, that the Doctor had to be put in focus, and just to have him challenged in his morals and his values, I think was terribly important.
And then shortly after, we started having pathos for a Dalek.
Boo!
It was incredible.
That's never right.
This is the writing we were now faced with the new series. It was great.
Yeah, and mix it all up and don't have preconceptions. And I guess that's a part of Russell too, you know, that don't have preconceptions about anyone or anything, and take people at face value, you know, take from people what they are, and whether they're aliens or humans, or, you know, we're none of us all white or black or dark or humans. And we're often very different with different people. You know, you just respond differently to someone than you will to someone else, or tell them something you won't tell someone else. And that grounds it. I think that gives the audience an access, because they absolutely understand the characters. They sympathise and empathise and can go along with them. Excuse me. The soap I'm in, I think, is often, it's a thing I have about the writing, because everything is very dark. Everything ultimately is, you know, it's like Greek tragedy. And they do have a saying with soaps, you know, if storylines are not going right, they say, Greek it up, and go back to the classics and look for all the dark things of infanticide and all of that sort of thing. But I think you've got to, I keep saying, we need more humour. You've got to engage the audience. You've got to get them to empathise with you and understand you and be the same as you. And then you can take them on this dark journey more easily. So Russell knows that instinctively.
Nice. Are you familiar with a series that we have stateside called Inside the Actors Studio?
No, I'm not.
Well,
you're not going to make me do an exercise.
No. But the Actors Studio, it's a training
yes,
university, and they have all sorts of actors and actresses.
Lee Strasberg.
Yes. And at the end, Mr. Lipton asks a series of questions.
Yes.
I have some of those
This
questions.
is very interesting.
I cut it down by about half, so.
Oh, right, they're always the same questions.
Yes, they're always the same. So, such as, what is your favorite word?
Ooh. I don't know. Schmooze. At the moment, schmooze. We were talking, actually, schmear, which is what I went to LI and a girl said, oh, you're going to have bagels and a schmear. And I just love that. So, schmear.
He usually follows up with, what is your least favorite? But to keep it PG-13, I'll just move on. What turns you on? What makes you feel? Yeah.
Al Pacino does.
Cappuccino?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Cappuccino.
Nice.
No, Al Pacino.
Oh, Al Pacino. Oh, well, yeah.
I also said earlier in the year, I flew a Spitfire. That turned me on, my God.
Oh.
I won it in a prize. I support, there's a memorial for the few in Dover, and I helped their charity. And there was a prize draw, and I paid whatever it was and entered the prize draw. And then I got a letter saying, Dear Miss Badland, you have won a prize. And I go to my partner, David, I've won a prize. I never win anything. I've won a... You have won first prize. David, I've won first prize. Alas. Oh, just my luck, alas. And the original prize had been to fly in a plane alongside a Spitfire and watch it. But the company had gone bust, so the prize became flying. There was a new company flying the Spitfire. And it was one of the glorious moments of my life, and every emotion you can imagine. Terror. I was overexcited to begin with, and then they send you all the health, and safety videos, and you have to sit through it just before you do it. And they're saying, if the pilot says jump, 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 you turn this, you lower your seat, you pull this, you push the cockpit out, and you don't just jump because then you smack into the tail of the plane. You have to slide down the side of the plane to fall out. And then they say, and if the pilot doesn't have time to say jump, 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 and you just see him jumping, follow him. Having to try to remember to undo the thing, lower the seat, pull the... I would have just been going, wait for me, wait for me. So, and then it was at Biggin Hill, so it was where all those Spitfires flew off with all those guys in the war. So I was beside myself, thrilled, terrified, very emotional, remembering the history of it. And then you get up and it's human scales, so it really is like you're flying with your arms out and, tipping to the side, and you can see all the kind of... I think great credit to the pilot who'd said to me, what interests have you got? Where do you live? And I said, near Epping Forest. He said, we don't have time to go that far, but I'll take you out by Dartford Bridge. So we went out by the Thames. And he said, do you like motor racing? And I said, yes. Well, there's an event on at Brands Hatch. So we flew over Brands Hatch and we saw all the cars sort of getting off the grid and everything. It was extraordinary. So that's not a word, I'm sorry, I've gone off.
Oh, it's a good story.
But that was just amazing. And then, of course, he also says he's got a mirror in front of him so he can see you behind him. You can give thumbs up or thumbs down or let me out of here or I'm going to have a heart attack. And he just said, well, because they go through using the joystick and then there are pedals on the floor to move the rudder. And he just said, right, over to you. And I could hear myself on the intercom, are you sure? I really don't know. Do you think it's all right? I don't know. He said, yeah. And he just takes his hands off the joystick and says, you just see his hands in there going, you're the only one flying this, man. So, all right. Woo! And we did a victory roll. I didn't control that, but we did a victory roll. Nice. They ask if you're up for that, which I certainly was. And then, of course, I didn't want to come down again. And my partner was with me, and he said, I think you had a bit extra time because all the guys came out to put the chocks on and everything. Went, oh, right, she should be back by now. So, absolutely amazing.
Nice.
Nice.
Very nice.
Nice.
What sound or noise do you enjoy?
I can't say.
Moving on.
And then I could be bossy as well.
What profession would you not do?
Cleaning service.
Last question before I turn it over to the audience. And keeping it, neutral. Should heaven exist, what would you like to hear God say when you show him at the pearly gates?
What a surprise to see you here.
So, any questions for Annette? Oh, my pottery better display.
Kind of more of a general question, but in watching some of the Doctor Who's, it seems like there's a rehearsal period before filming, and I find that unusual because I know that plays are rehearsed. I have not heard of TV shows. Is it like a day long? Is it a week long?
Well, no, I didn't know that was still happening because we certainly rehearsed because it was the very beginning of the regeneration. So we had a week beforehand because they were kind of finding out about the characters. So we went down, we did the read-through, and then I think it was about a week that they kind of experimented in small dirty rooms, in small cupboards with, I remember Russell on a small sofa, because Russell's a big man, in every way. Just being sort of squashed in this room and it's trying to do the scene in the cabinet, pretending the doors and things were closed. So, but I assumed that was because they were starting. They probably have a period with every new Doctor, but usually television, as you say, is so fast, you just do it on the floor before, before the scene's actually shot. So I didn't know that. And I'm amazed that they still do it, because I was saying earlier, when we did the first 2 eps, they also had programmed in a week between blocks of downtime and sort of catching up with things, and by the time I got back to do Boomtown, that had disappeared. That they just couldn't facilitate it because they were so up against time to make the prosthetics and all the props and things and get them done, that there wasn't rehearsal or prep time or downtime. It was just pushing forward.
Can we have another?
Certainly on the soap I'm on, we get no time at all. You read the words, you go on the floor, you read the words, you might read them again, they say, should we get up and do it for the cameras? And you're off, and then the director will say where they want the camera, and then you're just into it. It's terrifying.
Hi.
Hello.
I was wondering, what was it like filming on location in Scotland for Outlander?
It was great. My mom was a Scot, so I know Scotland. But she came from Edinburgh, not Glasgow, so it's based in Glasgow. It's actually filmed in a terrible place called Cumbernauld, in a sort of disused industrial site. Cumbernauld is a government where it's sort of rather desolate, and they'd moved people out in the 70s to council houses and things. And it's also where the government has their tax revenue offices. So Cumbernauld, you get a letter from Cumbernauld and you go, but yes, we did, while I was on it, very little location, because I was in the interiors, in the sets, in the disused industrial area. And we did go out to the castle once near Stirling, which is where the Python's also shot. But great, I love Scotland. I just love it. It's a bit like here. It always, the openness and the air and the clarity of the air is quite different from kind of further south in England. So I always enjoy it very much. And then as I said, the boys were just daft. They're full of humour, and just laughed a lot. Just had a very good time. And then that castle where we actually imported the mud. There wasn't mud in the courtyard, and the film unit put it in. So when I was filming there, and of course having long dresses and woolen, because the Terry Dressbark, the costume designer, is very authentic, so it's absolutely brilliant stuff. But there's not a bit of Velcro to be seen, or if you're meant to be wearing woolen stockings, you'd be wearing woolen stockings. And so, as the day went on, the mud gets slowly, and with a skirt on, it just goes. So it was up to here by the time I finished. The skirt weighs a ton, and then they wouldn't let me in the van to go home. They put me in a tent. I was in such a terrible state. They put me in a pop you up tent, made me take all my clothes off in the middle of nowhere, gave me a smock and a towel, and then sort of inserted me into another car that no one else was in because I was in such a terrible muddy mess.
Have you heard the story of the connection between Outlander and Doctor Who in regards to the character James Fraser?
Ah, right, yes.
Yes. For those that don't know, James Fraser is named after Jamie McCrimmon, played by Fraser Hines.
Yep.
And beautifully conceptualized right here. Fantastic, Sarah.
Yeah.
So, another question. Yes.
Hello.
Well, I'm very sad that you're not going to be back to Outlander. That was my first question. Was please, but I know they're shooting now.
Yeah,
so
I
it's
think
like,
Ron will try, but she shouldn't. The only thing I proffer is that maybe people turn up in the world that look a bit like Mrs. Fitzgibbons.
Well,
And it's me.
it's a little different than but what are some? Do you have any newer projects coming out other than EastEnders that?
It really, I also mention that I think it's out here already, the film about Emily Dickinson, A Quiet Courage, and that was Terence Davis, and I made that last spring, and I know it's been shown in Venice, and it will open in England, but whether it comes here, I don't know. Big Finish I might go and do in September, if I'm lucky. We're begging and pleading. They're tricky about one day, so we'll see. But sadly not. Until Aunt Babe drives into the the horizon.
We hear stories regarding Big Finish, regarding their lunches.
Wow. Either end, because they record in two places, and they've got the sound recordist is the editor is the chef in London, and he is absolutely brilliant. And then there are two ladies in the south of England where they film, where Tom goes, because that's close to where Tom lives as well. And it's just astounding. And some of the actors only go for the lunch. They don't care what part they're offered. They just want the food, but that's actors. Oh, free lunch, yes, I'll do that. But they are amazing and inventive and delicious. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
And the Spitfire, that's awesome, just hearing you say that.
Just extremely.
When preparing for a role, do you have any special routines that you do prepping for a new role? And has that changed since your beginnings from stage?
No, I try and take it from the writing. If writing isn't good, then you have to impose stuff on top of it. You know, you have to create it much more, but if the writing is good, you can just kind of dig and dig and dig. And I also like doing adaptations from novels, because usually a writer will have a very good character base to things and not be two-dimensional, or one-dimensional. I was talking to an actor just last week, and he said, are you an innie out or an out in? And I am an innie out. I've got to get the inside right, or I don't believe it myself. I can't function. So reading what you say, what your character says, what other people say about you, and then what you glean from, you know, the marriage of those two things, and then trying to find the truth in you for that situation, whether it's you know, it can be a very huge event within the story context, but you can relate it to something very simple in your own existence, and then try and grow that idea and that feeling within you to fulfill what's in the story. Is, I guess, how I work. Hard for actors not to sort of try and gain favour too. I remember once in a play, in Faustus, with Jude Law playing Faustus, and the voice coach saying to me at one point, I had to play the Pope, who was very ugly. She just said to me, don't be afraid to be ugly. And it's very simple, because actors want to gain favour, they want to be liked. For them, you know, it's an easy option. If you're struggling and you don't know what you're doing, then you can make people laugh, or you can dig deep. But she just said, don't be afraid to be ugly. And it was a very releasing thing, because it's emotional as well as physical. So I was a very ugly Pope.